Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I am so happy to have you join us today on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those wanting to learn more about how do you create financial wellness, and we will be taking different life cycles, and we're going to look at them both financially and emotionally, because personal finances are usually not about the money. They are usually more about the emotions associated with your finances and the habits that we form. And as I think everybody knows, the healthier we are emotionally, the better decisions we tend to make, whether they are financial or non-financial. But understanding your emotions around topics, especially like money, is very, very important for you to make good decisions. Although we might be somewhat general in our discussion, we would love to hear from you. You can reach out to me. My website is lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial, or you can post your questions and your comments on Facebook, YouTube, or anywhere else that you might be listening to us. And talking about questions, I often ask my questions, whether it's on the tax preparation side, the coaching side, how much did you earn last year? It's a reasonable question for a financial coach, right? The one that they do not expect is the follow-up that says, well, how much did you spend last year? The earning one, they know. That's an easy one for them. They don't always know how much they spent. And as everybody knows, it's easier to spend $1 than to earn $1, right? The problem is we generally do not track how our spending grows as our income grows, and we form habits, and we're not even aware of them sometimes. So sometimes getting back on track is something that somebody needs. And quite honestly, it's a little easier than you would think. So where do you start? That's probably the question you're asking. Right here today on this show, on this episode. Joining me today is Tony Steuer, who is a CLU and LA CPFFE. It's a lot of designations, but I can tell you he's more than the letters behind his name. He's an award-winning author, a podcast host, financial wellness advocate, and has his own mission on creating financial literacy for people, which I think is so important. And unfortunately, not very well taught in the school systems or anywhere else. He does have a structured program to help people get back on track, which we will talk about, and it's so desperately needed. I'm so happy to have you here. I think especially in these inflationary times in what's going on, I think sometimes with some of this uncertainty, I do think this is such an important topic, more relevant today than ever maybe. Tony, welcome to the show. Happy to have you.
Hirsch, glad to be here today. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And, before we kind of dive in, I think sometimes our backgrounds speak louder than anything else. What did we experience, or what do we see that, kind of helps people understand the passion behind what we do? I'm going to ask, can you touch a little bit on your background so people really understand kind of how your mission formed a little bit, if you can?
Sure. So quite a few years ago, I started out in insurance sales, and I quickly realized that people didn't understand the insurance policies they were buying. So I became a life and disability insurance analyst. The LA, which is special license in the state of California, which allows you to charge a fee for consulting on life insurance and disability insurance policies. And then over the course of the next 30 years, I spent a lot of time consulting predominantly for wealth managers, financial planners, CPAs, trust officers, and doing some litigation consulting, as well as I spent some time as a volunteer with the California Department of Insurance in their licensing and education oversight. And one of the trends that I noticed was, again, nobody understood the insurance policies that they were buying. Nobody understood the insurance policies that they were selling. And even the regulators sometimes struggled to understand what they were supposed to be regulating because the policies had become so complex. And so, I started doing some writing. I wrote my first book. And then, it just really, the mission of helping people to understand their insurance policies became my primary mission. And then over time, I discovered the financial literacy community and the fact that, it goes beyond insurance is that people just don't understand how the various pieces of their financial life fit together. So that's where my new mission came in, changing the way we think about money, is because I think you have to think about money as a whole before you get into the separate parts like insurance.
I think that's indicative of a much larger issue when it comes to what people are doing with their finances. And I think we're actually going to get into that. I do have some questions in my mind that will draw some of that out. But, before we get into that, before we get into the habits and how do we change them, and, how important it is to be deliberate in managing our finances, all things we're going to cover in a short period of time. I did want to ask your thoughts about some of the things you've seen over the years. Like, what are some of the unhealthy habits that you've seen people form? And I think maybe identifying them or highlighting some might have people who are listening to the show be able to relate better to some of the things that we're going to speak about, because I don't think they've even thought if it's a healthy or unhealthy habit. So what are some of the things that people have formed in that respect?
Well, I think one of the things is not thinking about your goals first. Is people are so driven by whether or not they should purchase a financial product. And that's really the wrong question. Is, if we go, for example, to the doctor and, we say, hey, my knee hurts. The doctor's going to say, okay, well, here's what we can do for your knee. We don't go to the doctor and say, hey, I need eye surgery. And the doctor says, well, why do you need eye surgery? Well, my knee hurts. And, that doesn't make any sense, but that's how the financial services community often works. And Bitcoin was a perfect example. I love picking on Bitcoin. Everybody's like, hey, should I buy Bitcoin or not? And that's not the right question. The question should be is like, well, is Bitcoin going to help you achieve your financial goals? Does it fit in to the rest of your financial life? So I think that's the thing, is we have to turn that on its head and start thinking about, like, what are the challenges we're trying to solve? And then is this the right tool to help us achieve that challenge?
Right. And I love that one, because if somebody says to you, and I've had the question as well, is Bitcoin a good investment? Well, in 2022 or 2020, right? I mean, the one, it tripled, and the other one, it lost 70% of its, of its value. So I do think, I think part of this comes to the lack of education. We don't see it in our homes in general. My parents, as wonderful as they were and taught me a lot of other things, they never really sat down and said, this is how you manage your finances. It's not taught in schools. And one example, just talking about, thinking about what you said earlier, that people don't always know what they're buying or what they're signing for, right? Is we get these college kids, right? They sign student loans, and I'm making up a number, I'm going to come out with 50,000, but they don't realize they're not going to pay back 50,000. They're going to pay back probably double that, right? With the interest and the time that it takes, etc. So they don't always understand what they're getting into to begin with. And then they think, oh, I'm going to be making so much money coming out of college. They don't. So they start off with that. They're not making quite as much discretionary income as they think they are. And by the time they're 25, they're in catch-up mode, and they've only been out, the workforce 2 or 3 years. So I think the education side of what you're talking about is so vitally important, that comes with all of this, and really understanding how it fits into your larger life, not just that this product sounds cool or good, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I want to back up to one of the things you said is, parents not teaching their kids. And the big reason why parents don't teach their kids is because they don't understand their money that well either. So that you can't expect the parents to teach kids skills that they don't have themselves or that they know. And then you get into the whole generational poverty and generational wealth is, if you have a wealthier family, then they're going to have access usually to advisors, and they can pass on sometimes that knowledge and access to advisors. And then as you talk about is like with a student loan is, how do we expect college students or incoming college students to make smart financial decisions when they don't even know what questions to ask?
Right.
Is they don't know the question asked, like, well, is this loan the best thing? Or as our friend Vicky Fallweiler says, is, can you look for colleges that are offering you a discount?
Right.
Can you look for scholarships? Because, they don't even know where to get started. All they know is like, hey, my friend got a college loan. I hear about college loans. That's what I need to do when I go to college. And that's not the only way to go to college.
Correct. And I mean, I deal a lot in the divorce world, as people know, and everyone will, or not everyone, I generally am working with the spouse that wasn't managing the finances, and they always say, that my spouse did well. It doesn't mean they were doing it well. They weren't born with a calculator, and they generally were not taught it. So understanding and having a structure and having a guide sometimes, which I'm sure we'll get into, is important. So I guess one of the big questions is, why do we struggle with habits and have such a tough time changing an existing habit? Well, we want to do that. We know sometimes we don't do something healthy. Why is it so difficult, or what's going on there?
Well, I think a couple things is, one, as humans, as change is challenging. With habits, particularly with money habits, is we don't even know what habits we need to change. And that makes it hard. It's, but if we look at, dieting, for example, is, the habits become unattractive, and they're not fun, and they're not easy to do. It's like, the doctor says, hey, you need to lose 50 pounds. And right away you go on some crash diet, you lose the 50 pounds. And then 2 years later, you put the weight back on. And so people, adopt these habits that they can't really stick with and aren't realistic. Like you hear about the financial independence, retire early, the FIRE movement. And, basically that calls for, stripping back all of your expenses, living like a Spartan, and then you'll retire early. But most of the people that I've been tracking in the FIRE movement have given it up or said, this is just not practical.
Right.
And that's the same financial advice you hear. It's like, hey, give up your daily latte. That's going to solve all your financial problems. Well, here's a news flash. Is one, I love a coconut latte from Starbucks, and that is not a cheap drink, but you know what? I don't buy it every day.
Right.
But if you think about it, you get a latte 5 days a week. It's $35 a week. Multiply that out over a year. Maybe you're talking $1,000. You could do a lot better reducing your mutual fund expenses by 1% a year. So that's the thing, is you have to think about, okay, well, what habits can I actually stick with and that aren't going to impact my lifestyle?
And that's one thing I like about the program, the longevity and the structure that you have, that we will get to. But I guess this is where we could put like hashtag the struggle is real, is so appropriate. And, I think also people, and this is part of the habit forming, it starts even before you realize. Sometimes when you're a kid, give you one quick example. I have a client I was working with last year, or early this year, I don't remember exactly, but they couldn't understand. They kept saying to me and needing reassurance, do I have enough money? Do I have enough money? And they literally had a few million, I think they had like 2.8 million or something. And they were in their 60s. And I said, look, if you spend $100,000 a year and that's not Social Security, that's straight out of your portfolio, without earning $1 in interest, you still got 28 years that you can draw on your fund. And they were like, oh. And when we started speaking a little bit deeper, what happened was, this was somebody who grew up in what we'd call kind of a depression home, right? Her parents had grown up, and there was always this mindset of scarcity. And so sometimes we don't even know how these habits have formed. And that becomes a big piece of it as well, And once she kind of had that clarity, look, I can have $100,000 come out of my portfolio. She was still working at the time. She could draw Social Security. She was like, oh my gosh, I can live life, actually. So I think really, again, it comes to education and beyond, where it really, we need to understand the full picture and why we've got to where we've got, if that makes sense as well.
Yeah, 100%.
So I guess kind of like we said, people are resistant to change. They don't always do well with change. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, I think is the phrase people say. So what, I'm not quite sure if this is the right word, but what is an easy way to create new habits? And in general, we'll kind of dive in on the financial side afterwards. But in general, what are the benefits related to changing a habit?
The first part of the question is about habits, is having an idea of what habits you actually want to change. We're told to do all these things in the financial world. It's like, go out there and get your emergency fund, go out there and save more money for retirement. But, those are just, aspirational goals, but they're not habits that are going to get you there. So, it's the first part is thinking about, okay, what habits can I actually change? And then reviewing the habits and thinking about, like, okay, is this a habit that I'm comfortable with changing? Like we talked about with the daily coffee,
Right?
I don't want to give up my daily coffee. That's something I enjoy. So I'd rather, maybe not have an extra $10,000 when I retire because I'm enjoying my daily latte.
Right.
So
For 40 years, I can enjoy that.
yeah, exactly. Now it's going to come out to more after 40 years, but the principle is, is
Right.
that a habit that you can live with? And then once you decide whether that habit is something that you can live with, then you can adopt that habit. Again, it goes back to dieting. If you're told that you're going to give up desserts forever,
Right.
that's great. You'll probably lose weight and keep off your weight, but are you going to enjoy it? Or are you going to be sneaking that cheesecake at midnight out of the refrigerator? Probably, because it's not a habit you really want to stick with and you're not invested in. So that's the big thing. You have to invest in habits.
I think that's huge. I think it also applies a little bit to what stage of life you're in, right? Because what serves somebody well and what they do in their 20s may be very different to, in their 30s or 40s when they've now got kids and they didn't have kids before. And, I'm not going to go out every week with my friends because, hey, I do need money elsewhere, right? And I think you know this already, but I do budgets differently. I don't just say how much comes in, how much goes out, and kind of what's, pray for the bottom line. But I actually separate your essential spend and we do that first, and then your discretionary or that non-essential spend. And people are like, oh, you're just going to tell me to cut that all out, right? And I'm like, no, because to your point, that's not sustainable. You could do it for a month, 3 months, whatever it might be, but then they're going to start creeping back in. Really making an educated decision. These are discretionary spend items that I just can't get rid of. I need them in my life. These are ones I can scale back on. These are ones I don't know why I ever started, right? Being able to do that. And to your point, whether it's starting a new habit that you never had before, changing one, I think becomes very empowering for somebody as well. Something for them to really think about and to be able to say, wow, I've never managed my money before and I'm 45, let's say somebody going through a divorce, whatever it is, but I'm getting this. Like, what else can I do, right? It becomes, it drives them a little bit, I think, in a way that maybe was fear and now is success and empowering and being proud of themselves. So I think there's a lot that happens there with people.
Yeah, 100%. And, I created the Get Ready habits. There are 8 habits that if you adopt them, you can adopt them at any phase of your life, any age, any stage, because that's the big thing too in the financial world is we're not prepared for changes in your life. Like you talked about spending in retirement, that's a huge problem. People, can't make that shift from accumulating because you're taught for 40 years, I haven't saved enough money for retirement. You got to save enough for retirement. You're only 98% assured of a successful retirement. You need to save more. And then people are like, okay, now you want me to spend money? I don't know how to do that, and I'm not prepared. So, the Get Ready habits are designed to, help people at any phase of their life because it's more your approach to money. And as you put it, the whole goal is to empower people to be in charge of their money and take control of their money because that's where it's at. It comes back to the adage is, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for life. And that's what I'm trying to do is to teach people how to feed themselves for life.
And quite honestly, that's so important. I think most people want to be contributors, not consumers. And so the more that they can learn and the earlier they can learn, I think sometimes people also have that, I don't want to call it a misconception, but error, is they think, I'm 30. I'll wait till I'm 40. That 10-year difference can make an enormous, enormous difference. I remember when my kids were in high school, I was putting a program together and I sat them down. I said, I want to show you something. And I said, if you 20 through 29 and you put $3,000 in an IRA and you never put away again until you're 65, person one. Person two says, I'm going to party through my 20s. I'll start at 30, but I'll just put $3,000 away for the rest of my life till I'm 60. Who has more at 65? And the numbers were pretty darn close, but you got to think person two put 3 times the amount of money away. And by the time they put their first dollar away, person one has 30,000 plus the growth. That's a lot of catch up. Then being able to think, what happens if I put the two together? Maybe I don't put quite as much away in my 20s, and then I bump it up when I'm 30, right? What could you accomplish? And again, it's not trying to save for 20 years so that you can retire for 20 years, because that's probably impossible for most. So these are the kind of things. Sometimes it's simple habits like that that you start to learn when you're younger, that become so vitally important. And if you get confidence in that, imagine being able to share that with your children. As you were talking about generational, we do pass things generationally. This could be generational wealth versus generational insecurity of not knowing, things like that. I would love to hear your response. We do have to take a break, so don't forget one if you have. When we come back, we'll recap what we've spoken about a little bit. There's already a lot. But Tony, before we go to break, what is a good way that people can get in touch with you and learn a little bit more about what you do in your program and things like that?
Well, through my website, which Hirsch has posted, www.tonysteuer.com, or reach out to me on LinkedIn.
All right, I'm just going to quickly spell that. That's TonySteuer.com. And we will be back in about 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm John Thomas. I want to share with you a professional products and services directory we call Going Solo Directory. And you need to check this out. If you want exposure to your business or are seeking professional product or services, this directory has it all. And that membership, for the many special features, you get the benefit of a worldwide exposure with a 40-minute video interview on an international business show showcase. All this for just one low annual fee. For more information, contact GoingSoloDirectory.com.
Hello, and welcome back to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am Hirsch Serman, your host. You can reach me at lifecycle.financial. Our guest today is Tony Steuer, who you can reach at tonysteuer.com, and that's TonySteuer.com. And we are learning about creating healthy financial habits, which unfortunately, as we were discussing earlier, they're not taught in school. They generally are not taught at home. Hopefully they are, even if you're just watching parents. But unfortunately, it does not permeate our society. It's not something that's common. You shared a little bit about your background, and really from kind of the inside out, understanding that even many professionals are not always 100% sure in what they're selling, let alone what people are buying. We spoke about people who are even younger than buying life insurance, people who are going into college, signing and not understanding really what they are signing. We spoke about some of the unhealthy habits, how when our income increases, our expenses do, but we don't follow why and what we are spending that money on. Something that I really liked as well that I think is so important is somebody knows potentially they need life insurance because they want to protect their family, but they don't buy it in the way that they understand or see, does it really align with my goals, or is just a product that I'm buying because I know I need it. And I thought that was a very, very important thing. We did touch on some of the benefits of changing habits. Why healthy habits are successful is something we're actually going to come into in a little bit. The last thing I think I can really talk about is the healthy habits is empowering, and it's more builds more confidence in people. And I think when it comes to breaking habits, we said, hashtag the struggle is real. We do get ingrained in what we do, and understanding and I think motivating ourselves to change is a big one as well. So a lot of things we covered. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or if you want to just dive into some of the other discussion that we're going to have. Let me know which one you prefer if you have any follow-up thoughts quickly.
I think the big thing, and this gets back to what you were saying right before the break, is to think about balance. You were talking about either, putting money aside, I think from 20 to 25 and, a bigger time period later on. But you also mentioned a balance, doing a little bit of each. And I think so often in the financial world is we tell people, it's a binary choice. You have to do this or you have to do that. And we don't help them find a middle ground that everybody feels good about. And I think that's important, is to seek balance.
That's very important. That is very, very important, because I think sometimes, and not just with money, but if we are always doing one thing and we know we want something else in our life, we kind of become resentful as well. And that can, throw people off. And I've had clients that say to me, they do fantastically well for 6 months, and then they kind of go on a binge spending trip and they ruin it all. And I think this is probably a big piece of it, right? They don't have that balance. I think that's important. And we touched a little bit on the benefits of changing a habit. Let's hone in a little bit deeper on why are healthy habits important for financial success? How do those drive financial success in the long term, really? Because these are not short-term things that we're talking about. We really are talking about, how do I create a life with these healthy habits to be able to be successful financially?
Well, healthy habits, are just habits that are positive for you. Again, talking about diets, healthy habits are, moderating your desserts, getting enough exercise. Healthy financial habits are things like we talked about much earlier in the show, is thinking about your goals first rather than products second. So, that's a G in get ready, goals defined. E is for educate yourself, thinking about, what do I need to know? And, to your point about student loans is, okay, well, how do I educate myself? How do I know what questions to ask? How do I evaluate my options? Which is another get ready habit, is to always go through your options. Is it just this? Or do I have another option that's available that may be, better? Like, we talked about with our friend Vicky Vollweiler, is like, okay, maybe you can get grants for certain schools. That's an option. So it's not a binary option of taking out a loan or not. It might be an option, well, I'm going to take out a partial loan and get a grant, and that's going to help me achieve my goals. And the other big one that we don't talk much about, but I know there's a big theme on the show, is T is for thinking. And it's about how you think about things, and, your mindset going in, as you talked about, is like, okay, what might be holding you back? Now, as you talked about with the Great Depression, my grandfather went bankrupt in the Great Depression. He owned like 3 or 4 laundromats in San Francisco, and he lost them all in the Great Depression. So, that changed the way my dad thought about money. And he never felt like, he never feels like he quite has enough, and, so that's the thing. So that impacted the investment choices he makes. It's impacted me and how I think about investments, because, I'm not that far removed, where it's impacted my mindset. So it tends to make me more conservative with how I invest my money. And like, to your point, it's like, I think my wife and I are going to be set in retirement, but there's always that fear, because I know my grandfather went bankrupt, so it's like, and he had thriving businesses. So, so I think thinking is so critical. And understanding your mindset.
I agree with that. And thinking also, it's not a set and forget, right? Like some people say, oh, I've got a financial plan. Have you reevaluated that? Are you thinking for this stage of life? Does it change when you have 1 kid, 3 kids, or you've just paid off college, or you've just paid off your house, or whatever it might be? These are things that you've constantly got to come back to as well. I just want to do 2 quick shameless plugs, I guess. One is, you've mentioned Vicky a couple times. Vicky's been on the show. She helps people evaluate colleges and get a good plan, but she also helps them tremendously on the financial side of it, and in the financial aid and appealing financial aid. She was actually on my show a couple of weeks ago. You can see that show, especially this year. It's a big one because they changed the FAFSA and the whole process has changed right now. So you can find that on lifecycle.financial. You'll see it on the Financial Wellness Show. The other one is, we've spoken a lot about kind of kids and student loans and things like that. For people going into the workforce, whether it's graduating college or not, I do want to just throw out, there is, right now it's free on my website, lifecycle.financial. Click on the Financial Wellness Academy, and there's a program, take you about an hour, 15, hour and a half. Talks a lot about re-entering the workforce, but there is a module on student loans as well. So just some helpful places to get some more information on some of the things that we've been speaking about. And I think, as kind of to your point, the majority of people, their financial success does not happen by chance or by luck, right? It's being focused. And that approach, I think, is very important. So what I'd love to do is, we've gone through the get. I want to look at the ready, understand a little bit about those. And then afterwards, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the kind of structure of that program. But let's go through the ready. We've gone through the get. Let's go through the ready on those habits. And then we can go a little bit more into kind of why the duration of these habits and forming them is so important as well.
Yeah, well, a couple of the letters we've already talked about. We've talked about details, focusing on the details. And that's the word that I use, exactly what you use, is focus, is spend time, understand the details. If any of you are college basketball fans and remember John Wooden, that was his big phrase. It's the little details that matter. And he was one of the winningest college basketball coaches ever. But, that's the, so like I play basketball. And so it's the little things, is, like your footwork. If you watch Steph Curry, if you're a basketball fan and you watch Steph Curry, his movement is beautiful. He's all over the court. He's always moving. And that's the key, is, it's the details that make somebody like Steph Curry great. And those are the details that can help you with your financial life if you focus on those details. Expenses are a big thing. We talked about saving expenses on your mutual fund. The other thing I urge people to do is think about the true cost of a purchase. So, for example, if you're buying a new car, the purchase price of the new car is not just how much you pay for the car itself. Right. The purchase price is, your insurance. Your purchase price is if you need garage space for your car. It's, the maintenance. If you buy a more expensive car, the maintenance is probably going to be more expensive. The insurance is going to be more expensive. So, that's your total true cost. So, you may be looking at it. Well, I don't think you can get a car for $25,000 anymore. but if you could find a $25,000 car, you're probably going to be paying $35,000 for it, over the long term. So, that's that. The other thing is why, and we're going to get into that, is why is for yearly review. Nothing is set it and forget it. That's one of the biggest things in the financial community that bugs me. That's my pet peeve, is, especially I saw that with insurance policies, but then I saw it across the board. Everybody goes in, sometimes they go see a financial planner once, they get their portfolio set up, they go in their 401k, they're 35 years old, they sign up for their 401k. 15 years later, they go back at age 50 and say, oh, I haven't reallocated my 401k investments in 15 years.
Right.
That's a little bit of a challenge. You could optimize your 401k assets by going back and reviewing them every so often. So I think that's a huge thing, is the yearly review. And that's why I created the financial calendar.
And I do want to get to that, but one of the things that you've just said, I think is so important, because I've seen this as well. I mean, I've seen people that literally, as you said, the number you threw out is 15 years. That's not uncommon. I just want to kind of point out the chances are you're not really going to have enough money until, let's say, 30. Hopefully you will before, but let's say 30 till you work with a financial advisor in depth, right? Well, 15 years later, you're 45. If you haven't done your reviews and thought about your goals and how your life's changed, whether it's you've bought a house since, whether it's you've had kids, well, now some of those kids might be ready for college or in college. Was all of those items like that taken into account when you were 30 for when you were 45? Probably not. And so that's just one illustration of why it's so important, let alone that asset classes don't perform exactly as they did historically, and it gets out of balance. And now your risk is not in line with what your adversity to risk is, all the rest, right? These are all the things that need to come out as you walking through your life or your financial life. And that's another, just one of the big reasons why reviewing and constantly being in touch is so important, I think, as well. Talk about being in touch. Let's touch a little on that calendar. How does following that financial calendar integrate or help integrate healthy habits as they follow that calendar?
Yeah, so the concept of the financial calendar is to help organize the entire financial picture. So if you think about your financial life like a puzzle, you've got puzzle pieces over here. You got your 401k over here. You got your life insurance piece over here. You got your health insurance piece over there. I could go on, about all the pieces, but, we don't oftentimes take a look at, okay, is my puzzle complete? Do I have overlapping puzzle pieces? Maybe a puzzle piece I can get rid of, a financial service product I can get rid of. Oh, gee, there's a big hole here. But then, like you point out, is a puzzle piece may change. Like, I don't know how many life insurance policies are viewed where an ex-spouse is still the primary beneficiary. Right. And that is usually not somebody's goal, is to have their ex-spouse as the beneficiary on their life insurance policy. A little bit of sarcasm there on that one, because I know that hits home for you in your work is, but that's the thing is, so, each week I give people a very clear, easy to follow action items that they can do. And 1 week is review the beneficiaries, but it's on your estate plan, review the beneficiaries on your life insurance plan, but also review the beneficiaries on your retirement plan. People do not go back and review the beneficiaries on their 401k plans.
Right.
They just don't. And
I've spoken to a lot of people. I can attest to what you're saying that have that.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just because people don't think about it, but we spend so much time, and even financial planners, they're focused on the perfect asset allocation, right, and all these other things. But even if you have the best financial planners, there's only a finite amount of time to go through everything during your meetings with them. Otherwise you'd be spending hundreds of hours with your financial planner each year to go through all these little things. So I wanted to create a program where people could go through these little things and then know when it's time to talk to a dedicated professional. The yearly calendar does not replace an insurance agent. It doesn't replace an estate planning attorney. It doesn't replace a financial coach. It's just something to help you see how everything fits together and what you need to take action on.
And one of the things I love about that, by the way, is I've run into so many people that have said, I know I've got to put your laundry list together of items that they want to do. They just get overwhelmed because they think they have to do it today. It's got to get done. Oh my gosh, right? It's urgent. Well, you're saying to them, yes, it's got to get done. It just doesn't all have to get done today. Let's do it in a manageable way, because I find so many people push it aside because they're overwhelmed, as opposed to having the structure, right? Many people, I think, a lot of my clients are this way. They need that structure and sometimes like a guide to be able to understand what to do, and then they can fly. They can really make it happen. And you want to be better at tennis, you get a tennis coach, right? It's the same kind of idea. Sometimes we just need that guide, that person to show us the way, and then we can really thrive. It's the same when it comes to your financial life or living life. I think a program like this offers that to people. It takes a lot of that stress and the overwhelming, like, I've got 20 things I've got to do. Well, yes, but if you did one of those every week or one of them every other week, you'd still be done within a year in this example. What a wonderful way to be able to create that financial success. And again, as we spoke about, that empowerment, I think, becomes so important. It becomes very powerful. Like, I think it's good to celebrate your wins, right? If we can look back on week 10, on week 20 and say, look at what I've actually accomplished in all this time. It doesn't seem like a lot because it's these little pieces. But I think when you put it all together, it's amazing what you actually accomplished with that structured, and as I call it, kind of the enduring program, as opposed to, you know, the one that just overwhelms you. And are you really going to do it right? Or are you going to miss something if you try to do it all in one shot? I think it's so important. So one more quick question to get in. And this is, what is your number one tip for changing the way you think about money?
Be curious. Ask questions. And, you know, this actually brings us back to the top of the hour. What we were very first talking about is people are not asking questions about their money. They're either intimidated,
right?
You know, they're talking to a financial planner, and the financial planner says, well, you know, do you want to put your money into an IRA or a Roth IRA? This is tax advantage. This is not tax advantage. You know, what's your, you know, your risk tolerance? And the client goes, God, I don't want to admit it, but I don't even know what an insurance premium is. You know, what is an IRA? You know, what does tax deferral mean? I don't even know what tax deferral means. And so, you know, we don't ask the questions. And if you don't ask the questions, you're not going to get the answer. So, you know, that's the other part of what I'm trying to help people do, is to figure out what questions to ask. But if you don't ask questions, you're not going to get answers. You have to be curious. Right. You have to want to know the answers. You know, and if you don't, your money's just going to manage itself, and that's not a great way to go.
And I love that, because it could be going places you really don't want it to, just because you didn't ask a question. And I have said this to every single one of my clients that I recommend money managers to, because I don't manage money. I will say to them, I do not want you to invest $1 with them until you're comfortable and understand what you're investing in. I think that becomes an enormously positive thing going into that meeting, knowing I don't have to sign until I understand, because sometimes we feel bad. We're taking their time. They put in time to prepare. They put this plan together. Well, all of that is wonderful, but it's what they should be doing. And again, they work for you. You don't work for them. So please make sure you're comfortable. And before we wrap up, just one more time, how can people get in touch with you so that they can learn more? And I think these habits are an amazing starting point, and then going into a calendar of the small but positive steps to move forward really can change somebody's financial life. So I encourage people to go to your website, and if you can share a little bit quickly how they can get in touch with you should they want to connect more.
Yeah, well, you can sign up for free at www.tonysteuer.com. It's called Join the Get Ready Movement. My weekly newsletter has that weekly action item, and after the first year, it repeats. So if you miss something the first year, that's okay. But it also helps you review it. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Tony Steuer, that's Steuer. And if you can't remember how to spell it, just look for Hirsch on LinkedIn. We're connected, so you can find me that way.
And I encourage people to do it. It sounds like a lot that there's a year, but when you chunk it up small pieces, it makes it so much easier. And sometimes you actually want to do more than you're going to get. You know, you want to get 2 emails a week just to get started or just to get moving forward. But I do encourage people, please go to Tony's website. And Tony, I appreciate it. I think this, as I said at the beginning, is such an important topic, especially with where our financial world is today, and prices have gone up and all the rest. I think people really need to take control, and it starts with your goals and your education, I think, is your best starting point, which is the beginning of your Get Ready program. So I think it's a good place. I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That is lifecycle.financial. You can always reach me through there asking for Tony as well. If you need to get in touch with him, I have his contact info, obviously. And thank you again, Tony. Thank you, CC Schatz, our producer for the show, making everything happen to make it easy. Everybody have a great week. I will not be on next week, So have a great Thanksgiving if you're in the US, and hopefully you have a wonderful time in between.